Hey everyone, welcome to another Hometown History episode. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Dami.
And we are going to cover the Mifflin House. We were not able to record this last week because of a technical error, so thank you for everyone online for being patient with us.
Thank you.
This is going to be part one, and the title is Hellam Township's Mifflin House and its American Revolution, Underground Railroad, and Civil War Legacy.
So tonight for our agenda, we're going to talk about one of the oldest and continuously operating farms in York County, the Mifflin House, which is where we were filming live the other day. And you're going to hear the history of the three families that lived there. So there was the Mifflins, the Hubers, and the Blessings. We're going to cover the background story of how they all lived there and how the place almost became an industrial park and what the plans are for the future and all the history in between. And there's going to be a heavy focus on the Mifflins and the Underground Railroad history. And of course, we're going to talk about the Civil War, and then we're going to finish with plans for the future.
Yeah, we of course have takeaways for you. One is that this is a historically significant site that has been well documented, and it's an excellent example of a Quaker Underground Railroad stop between the years 1800 and 1850. This is a vital link between the secret cooperation that transcended race and religion and even generations. That's number one. Number two, this is an amazing stop for the Revolutionary War and the Civil War that really shaped America, not just York County. Yes. Number three, preserving the Mifflin House is the latest win for this area in the lower Susquehanna. We have preserved a number of different properties that we're going to go over tonight, but this is the latest grassroots civic engagement win. And then soon the public will be able to learn more about the Underground Railroad and the Mifflin House and this important site.
Very exciting stuff. So we have an extra that we already filmed with Pete Mealy, who is the senior project leader of the Susquehanna National Heritage Area, and he was with us that night at the Mifflin House, so you can already check that out on Facebook or YouTube.
Let's dive into Pennsylvania's newest state flower, the warehouse. So, if you go to the Mifflin House and you look around, you'll see that there are warehouses. And we almost lost this site to a warehouse. I am a board member for the Farms and Natural Lands Trust, and Sean Kenny has a great quote that he recites that says, "We need to save the best and zone the rest." But we almost lost this space to a warehouse, which isn't cool.
Yeah, a developer threatened to demolish the land and the house that is the Mifflin House. So Agnes Blessing was the previous owner. She sold the property to Kinsley Equities back in 2016. And they were the ones that started the process of building a warehouse, which dated back to a development plan that was filed with the county all the way back in 1998.
When the Kinsleys purchased this, I remember having a conversation with the late Tim Kinsley, and he explained that without significant investment in this site, it is just going to be a vacant house that no one will visit. It needed economic input, and if no one was going to invest in it, then it wasn't going to be worthwhile to keep in the county. At the time, I agreed with him. I think it made a lot of sense because if we had no investment, we had no visitors. But as a disclaimer too, the Kinsleys had just donated a crap ton of money to the Gettysburg Foundation for them to build the new tourism center. They also have preserved the most land in York County. So I think the family has its correct priorities, and in this case, at the time, it just didn't quite make sense.
Right. So all of this led to some protests. So the Kreitz Creek Valley Historical Society protested the development of the warehouse. So Don Bear of Wrightsville Historical Community took the intentional steps to amplify the historic significance of the place by organizing pickets, and they stood outside of the home with signs, and they had fact sheets, which you can see in this photograph here. Preservation Pennsylvania chose the property for its 2017 list of historic properties at risk of destruction, and thanks to that nomination from the Historic Wrightsville Inc., it's probably why we're still being able to talk about
it,
the Mifflin House and why we were able to film there the other day.
If you were a protester, comment below. We'd love to hear from you about why you got involved and why you decided to protest.
Yeah, there was no protesters at our live episode, which was surprising just because it seemed like the people that showed up were connected, but maybe you're online and you're watching this, so we'd love to hear from you either today or once we put this on YouTube, please comment.
When we look at the Susquehanna National Heritage Area, this is not the first time they found themselves in a peaceful revolution for a land controversy. The Lomont Farm debate goes back to the mid-2000s, and it was a really unpopular example of eminent domain, and it resulted in 2 additional county parks, though. We now have High Point and native lands. Because of their determination, we also have the Dritt House preserved, which you can see there in the background. Is a gorgeous house. I love it. It's also known as the Zimmerman Center. And in addition to this and the other 2 parks I just mentioned, it brought about the Captain James Smith Chesapeake National Historic Trail. I had to read that.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tongue twister.
Yep. And these are major sites for Native American history, and even they gained the county's only designated National Heritage Area site, and it is only one of 7 in Pennsylvania.
So some good things can come out of some strife.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But back to the Mifflin House, which is our focus. So Kinsley Equities proposed a 2-year, I can't talk tonight, a 2-year moratorium in 2019. And that meant that they would not build if preservationists could raise $5.5 million. So there's where that million came in. So what's challenging about telling the history stories is that we rarely have the pleasure of surprising you. There's no spoilers here because you know the community was successful. We filmed an episode at the Mifflin House. So that proves that they were able to save the Mifflin House.
There's a nonprofit called the Conservation Fund that purchased the property back in 2022, and then it transferred it to the Susquehanna National Heritage Area in 2023. Now, the Susquehanna National Heritage Area, Pete Mealy will be very proud of me for enunciating. They were able to add that very important word of national in their name in 2019, and at the time, it was only one of 55 sites in the country. And in case you were wondering, by calling it a National Heritage Area, it labels it just one rank below National Park.
Super exciting. So during our live discussion, we asked the audience if there's a place you remember visiting that made history come alive for you, because you can't just read history in a book. Sometimes you need to visit it. So if you're watching, please comment, talk about it. I know that I used the example of the Landis Valley field trip that I took in 4th grade. I just thought that was really magical. They had docents there. You got to go into one-room schoolhouses and see what it was like to live during like the colonial period. I just thought that was really cool. It made the history come alive.
You dress up.
Yeah,
you have a lot of historical outfits.
I do.
Which one is your favorite? Not the Civil War. Can't be Civil War. Which one outside of that is your favorite?
Probably the like mid to late 1800s. I have this really cool like 1880s walking suit that a girlfriend of mine made for me, and we rode the Strasburg Railroad, sort of like we were in the Gilded
Age. I love
Age.
That picture with your hair was curlered. Yeah. That stuff has to be heavy.
It is heavy and hot, and they didn't have air conditioning back then.
Oh goodness, and that's why people passed out.
Yeah.
So let's dive into the original inhabitants of this land. Scott Mingus conducted a lot of original research. We use this as a resource, and we encourage you to buy the book online. It's called The Ground Swallowed Them Up, and this is an instrumental piece when looking at the coverage of the Underground Railroad. Yeah. In addition to Scott Mingus, we also have the York Daily Record and the Sunday News. They did a lot of coverage, as well as, which of course is Jim McClure and all his work. And then Becky Zeller, shout out to her with Zeller Preservation. They gave us a lot of insights. Studying this topic by design is really difficult. The Underground Railroad was secret, right? It was called the Underground, right? Yeah. So Scott's uncanny ability to unearth this clandestine material is pretty impressive, and the reason why we're able to even do this presentation.
Absolutely. So the Susquehannocks were the ones that also occupied this area at the time, and they built 2 forts on the hillside above Long Level, and that was for protection against threats against rival Native American groups. So the property is a part of original 118-acre tract of land. So that's a lot of land, and it all goes back to the founder of Wrightsville. That was John Wright, and he left the property to his son James Wright, and his daughter Susanna Wright then inherited the property in 1788. However, she lived in Lancaster County with her family. So if you want to hear more about the Wright family and Susanna, you're going to have to tune in a minute here for part 2.
See ya, part 2.
See ya.